Hi, this is Tasheena.
And this is Jonathan.
And this is
Abandoned Ship.
A sci-fi podcast where we are taking you on a journey through Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yes, we are on the first episode, the second part of the first episode. We decided to split up into two. It's a bit long.
Thankfully, we got out of our time loop from last episode, and we are able to move on.
Exactly. All right.
So yeah, Emissary Part 2. We pretty much left off with saying goodbye to the Enterprise.
Yep, the Enterprise has left Deep Space Nine and do a little ad break, and then boom, right as they're gone, now we got the Cardassians showing up.
And who shows up but Gold Dukat?
Yes, our first look at Dukat. Not our first look at the actor.
That's
he
right.
actually played another Cardassian. The first Cardassian we saw, actually. In the
really?
Wounded
So he's
TNG
pretty much the
episode.
first Cardassian in both shows.
Basically, yeah, like the first one of note here.
man.
And then...
They liked him so
yeah.
much. They're like, bring him back, bring him back.
Yeah, because one TNG were very much like proto-Cardassians. They had not as good... the makeup was much worse, and the outfits were worse. And they had these weird headgear, and their personality just wasn't developed. But they definitely saw some potential there. So like, we're just going to bring him back again.
Okay.
I guess he must really like the makeup.
God, hours.
Many hours.
Ugh. Anyway, all right. So yes, he arrives and he comes aboard Deep Space Nine, and we get our first interaction with him and Ben Sisko.
Yeah, and Dukat was the prefect of Bajor while it was under occupation, so he basically ran the whole show. Station was his office, his station, so...
And now Sisko's warming up that chair.
Mm-hmm.
I think the big note here in this meeting is we are really getting into the double speak of Cardassians. Like you really got to be careful with them because everything is under the surface.
Right.
And because of how they are, and this is part of their culture, we'll see a couple times in this episode where they expect others to also be hiding their meaning underneath and not
exactly
tell the truth outright. And it kind of puts them in a pickle a couple of times in this episode.
Yeah, so right off the bat you have... So this is a very awkward situation because obviously Bajor is now independent, and it was a brutal occupation, and so obviously Gul Dukat is here very intentionally to like kind of rub it in.
Yep.
Right?
Pretty much we are right outside the door. If anything slips, bam, we're going to come in.
Yeah, it's like part threat. Hey, we're close. Starfleet's, their ships aren't here. They can't protect you.
But we're close if we need them.
Yeah, and that's the double speak is, hey, we're your Cardassian neighbors will respond, to any, issue you might have. So it's like extending this olive branch that isn't really. Mm-hmm. But it's also a little more than that because he is currently talking with Sisko, the Starfleet commander, and he's talking with him more like an equal, right?
Yes.
Which I also think is very indicative of their way of thinking because he and the Cardassians still clearly think very little of the Bajorans. So they're going to bypass them and they'll talk to their real,
the real people in charge,
their peers, the Federation,
Exactly.
at least who they think are their peers, is the Federation.
Which I wonder if they kind of view it a little bit like curious concerns, like, oh, these are now the new people coming in.
Yeah. We ran Bajor for a while, so now you're running it, of course, the same way we would, because that's how we think. So we'll go in here and be generous and give you some pointers for dealing with these Bajorans.
Exactly.
And Sisko kind of, you can tell he recognizes that because when he mentions the neighbor's comments, Sisko's like, "We'll try and keep the dog off your lawn," like saying what. He's getting at what Dukat is getting at, which is like control the Bajorans.
Yes.
But in a very, he almost spits it out, right? Like that's what.
Oh.
Sisko's pretty good at being diplomatic because again, you are you do have to be diplomatic to an extent. You can't say what you really think. Cisco can't either. He can't say what he really thinks either.
And he's pretty good at relaying, like, yeah, I get what you're throwing down.
Yeah.
I'm not
I get what
stupid.
you're throwing down, but also he does not hide his contempt.
And here we see, again, Cisco lie to Gold Dukat because Dukat mentions the orbs and how we can work together.
They must have a pretty good spy network or some sort of ways of surveillance because he knows that he met Opaka and he knows that he has the orb, offers an exchange of information. Cisco's like, I don't know anything about an orb.
Orb? What orb? I don't know her.
I don't know. I was looking at this. I don't think it was meant to be a lie because it's not very convincing. The way he says it isn't convincing. And Dukat sees right through it. It's like, okay, yeah. But it's just a by not acknowledging officially that they have it, they don't even have to deal with this request of collaboration.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Because he offered like, hey, maybe we could do an exchange of information by saying we don't have an orb. That's our official stance. So we're not even going to entertain this offer of giving you any information. So he sort of makes his position clear that on the official side, Starfleet is not interested in working with the Cardassians.
Yes. I just think it's interesting. I just think Picard might have handled this interaction differently.
Possibly, yeah.
That's my no. It's not. I know Dukat knows he's not intelligent. Like, again, all subterfuge, like all double speak, and they know that they know, and all that layers. So, and then he's like, is it okay if we pretty much hang out on the promenade?
Yeah, have some shore leave, which Cisco grants. And again, this is more just sort of like rubbing it in the Bajorans' faces, like, we're still here, you know, gambling and laughing and whatnot. So, yeah.
So, our next scene, it's interesting because when you get the orbs in, or the orb, and the whole thing is like finding the Celestial Temple, I feel like in other shows, this would have been the season, is finding the temple. But because we have to get to the wormhole, they kind of, nope, we are shrinking it down. She found it. So Dax did some digging. She found out where like 5 of the other orbs were located, brought up some poetry about the Denorius belt, pretty much just little things here and there that indicate that the Denorius belt is probably where they need to search.
It's an interesting point about how another show, especially nowadays, it would have been a whole season. It makes me, obviously here, you know, they're interested in getting to their formula as quickly as possible. Even though it is a more serial show, they still have a formula to get to, and the wormhole is the big part of that. So yeah, they're sort of on their full throttle, just gotta set up, so you can get the wormhole. And actually, the point you bring up about a modern show would be like the whole first season.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. I feel my vision, I now have this vision in my head, this Netflix original series, right? The whole first season is finding the wormhole, and the critiques this show gets are it's kind of slow, but well, when they finally get the wormhole, it's worth it, and then it's canceled, and you never get to find the wormhole. And I think there's something to be said for...
It's left on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, cutting to the chase a bit.
Yes.
Not everything has to be drawn out to a season length.
I feel like a lot of modern shows, and I usually wait until like a season or two because I feel like a lot of shows were like a movie.
Yes.
They had a movie idea and they're like, oh, this will be a great like 6-episode, 8-episode show. And it's like,
Do you think they have more scripts lying around that are movie scripts than TV show scripts?
Probably, because TV shows are hard.
Yeah, now that I think about it, they probably have tons of pitches for movies out there.
Netflix goes to their bin.
Yeah. You can draw this out to 10 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point there.
But even though I've already seen this, there's a part of me that was like, this is going to take a while. I'm like, no, wait a minute. They get to the Celestial Temple by the end of the
They do it really fast. The pacing does feel a little fast, but
that to me is probably the weakest point for me of the episode is just how quickly to get. Like I said, the Kardashians have had these orbs for like a while, and the fact that they kind of didn't. It's fine.
Well, I think
it's fine.
If you want a push his glasses up
okay.
face, get an in-universe explanation. The one thing they do have over the Cardassians is cooperation. They have access to all of the Bajoran texts.
Oh,
because that's what they established in an earlier scene. I think they say, they link to the Bajoran database and pull up like they have some sort of access to like the last 10,000 years of Bajoran history.
Okay,
and I'm guessing the Cardassians either never got that, like it was hidden from them, or dismissed it, like, oh, this is this stupid Bajoran superstition bullshit nonsense. All we're interested in is the orbs.
Yes.
But they smartly work with the Bajorans. They get all these texts and yet the poetry that she's referencing.
Okay.
And they're able to like extrapolate, see through the poetry and to the facts.
Okay.
So I think that's what they're getting at here.
So it's probably
that's
a little
why
better. It just happens so quickly.
This is definitely a classic like main characters get thing, figure it out in 45 minutes.
I mean,
or in this case,
Dax
5 minutes.
really did do it in a day.
Well, she's very smart. So
she's very
that's
smart.
why she's the science officer.
Well, they want to go to the Denori's belt, but of course they got all these Kardashians at the door. They don't.
Oh, yeah, Kim and Kay and all of them.
Yes. The Jenners, Kim and Kay, they're all there, and they do not want them to follow them.
So what do? They give them a bag.
They do a little trickery, and they use Quark as part of their plan. I didn't write much notes about this. All I wrote was, I think it's hilarious that Quark is carrying Odo.
Yeah. It's interesting that Quark is helping them, I guess. I'd like to think that he earned, I guess, enough of his respect that he'd
what I
help
mentioned
out.
in the last episode. Yes. That's why I think he helped with this, where I don't know if he would, if him and Sisko didn't like have that kind of battle, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, basically they just set up, you have the Cardassians are on shore leave, they're all gambling. They've set up so that they win a bunch of stuff, and then Kira comes in and pretends to close down Quarks, and Quarks is all like, you can't do that. Give them a bag for their winnings. They very suspiciously hand them a bag. The Cardassians take it to their ship, and it turns out the bag was Odo, shapeshifted into a bag.
The amount of times Odo is just like manhandled is hilarious to me.
I guess that's why while he's a bag.
I know. I have so many questions that I'm like, I
must have some way of sensing.
I need to, when we do this rewatch, I need to take note. Like every time he mentions something about a shape-shifting to see like, how does this work when he becomes an object?
Yeah, so take him to the ship and he shapeshifts out and causes some damage. Takes their ship offline. I forget how they bring him back. They beam him back?
I think they do.
Okay, yeah.
In a very specific way. And I think Miles like, oh, I don't know.
Oh yeah, he's like you get some like
Miles is a transport operator. So.
You start to get a glimpse of like, okay, the station isn't like your typical in full working order Starfleet system. Like he basically ends up like kicking the console to get it to work, and but they do have some sort of like Starfleet computer, I guess, hooked up to it, because it's all like, we can't do that because it's not safe. Request canceled.
I wrote that later when they go on their separate journey from Ben, the DS9, and I have Miles have Miles have fight
later.
with computer.
Right. Yeah. The kicking is here. The safety protocols is later.
Yep.
All right.
So it works. So they head over, and is it the Rio Grande?
Yeah, the Rio Grande.
Grand. Not Rio Grande. Grand.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. We are not going to all their shuttles are names of rivers. So the Rio Grande, the Yangtze Kian, something else. We are going to pronounce them as they do in the show, because a lot of them are not pronounced correctly by the actual river names.
Okay. So I'm not just dumb.
Yeah, like they say Yangtze Kian, and I don't think that's how it's pronounced at all. And they say, yeah. So we're just going to pronounce that they do in the show. Just disclaimer there.
So Dax and Sisko head out, and they find a stable wormhole in the Denori's belt, which no one has ever found before.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. This is one of those just Trek lore things where you would think wormhole, what's a big deal? You're sort of spoiled by sci-fi at this point, but In Star Trek, there are no stable wormholes, like, period. That's why Voyager never finds them, I guess. Because they're trying to get on for 7 seasons and never found one.
Too bad.
They had an whole episode about how depressing it is to find a wormhole because it sucks.
So Dax and Cisco go through, and on the other side is the Gamma Quadrant, which we all got lots of new species and people from the Gamma Quadrant to come. So exciting journey ahead. They're excited. As they're going back over, they start losing velocity. And all of a sudden they're landing somewhere? How can he land somewhere in a wormhole? And they're like, okay. They get out of their ship, and it's very interesting. They both are seeing completely different things. Cisco is seeing like storm, rocky terrain. It's dark, it's rough. And Dax comes out, and she's like, it's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. And it is like paradise. And they're both looking, because, that she says that.
Yeah, there's something funky going on.
Like, what are you talking about?
This whole scene has some very interesting acting choices. I feel like a lot of their line deliveries are very strange.
So I'm wondering if this is, because they're in a way, the prophets are kind of doing their scanning of them. So I wonder if this is a part of like almost their psyche.
The different visions. Yeah. Yes. I that's how I guess I interpret it, as it's almost like seeing how they react determines who stays and who goes. Because what ends up happening is Cisco like remains there, but Dax is like yoinked out,
jettisoned,
and sent back to the station inside what looks like an orb. It's the same like visual effect as the orb.
Oh, she's actually not sent to the ship. She's just sent out. They say, orb comes out.
Yeah, an orb comes out and they beam her out.
And they get her, thankfully, before somebody else does.
Yeah, what happened if they didn't beam her out? Would she just keep eating off into space forever?
Hopefully someone would find her eventually. So Dax just appears back on DS9, which we find out they're not like right next to the wormhole. This is a pretty far journey.
Yeah, right now they're in orbit of Bajor, and the wormhole is a little bit further away.
Yes.
And now that it's open, now that it opened again, the Cardassians have seen it.
Yes. So this is where Ben starts his conversation with what we call the prophets, or Bajor calls the prophets. And he begins by trying to explain to this new species what humans and Earth are. And whoops, they do not understand linear time. And so majority of this episode is Cisco trying to explain to people who do not experience linear time what that means. I just wrote, good luck.
It's like explaining color to a blind person. This is like one of the most Trek things you can imagine.
And I loved every minute.
Yeah, it's like this is probably every Starfleet officer's dream. Meet a species that doesn't understand that you can explain humanity to.
He was ready to. I couldn't believe actually how good his answers were. And he wrote this in a journal. He's been ready for this moment. So at this point, we go back and forth between Ben and his interactions with the prophets and Kira and the crew on DS9. So instead of doing a ton of back and forth, I think we should just we can quickly go through Kira and what DS9 goes through, and then let's really dive into Ben. Because it's, whew. So, because Dax is jettisoned out and Cisco is stuck in the wormhole, they're like, we need to get there.
Yep.
And as quickly as possible. And Mom's like, it might take a month or something. And Kira's like, you have a day. That is a ongoing joke I love in Star Trek, where the engineer person, somebody's always like, oh, it's going to take this amount of time. And literally, it's always like, you have an hour.
Yeah. Very unreasonable work environment.
Yes. And so, of course, they do their techno-babble stuff where they figure out how to do this. This is where Miles has his fight with the computer, and I think almost explodes the station.
Yeah, I think we were about 5 seconds from the entire ship, the entire station, and everyone on it blowing up.
And I'm like, oh boy. So while they're trying to figure out how to get the station to go quicker, a team of 4 get into a little ship, I guess the Rio Grande, and...
Well, I guess they don't have the Rio Grande, so which one's this?
Oh, yeah, they don't. Cisco does.
Saratoga.
Saratoga. There you go.
No, Saratoga was the ship.
Oh,
sorry, I'm reading through the transcript. Saratoga was Cisco's ship at Wolf 359.
Oh, okay.
They go on the Yangtze King.
Cool. So it's Odo, Kira, Dax, and Bashir is a team. They're trekking along, and as they're heading to the wormhole, I guess Ducat got the systems running back on the ship, and they talk to them. And, Bashir has a pretty good episode. He doesn't do anything cringe. He did have a little bit of a naive moment where he's like, oh, but they have to listen to reason. And Odo's just doing the biggest eye roll, like, you okay? And
he was also given the audience explain line earlier when Dax shows up at the station and she's like, this wormhole's not a natural phenomenon. And he has to say, not natural? You mean it was constructed? It's like, yes, that is what non-natural means.
Thanks, Bashir.
But gotta drive that point home. Someone made it.
So, Gold Ducat is like, I think guys use the orbs to find these new aliens, and you're going to broker a deal with them.
They're negotiating for their technology, so... Like, no, they seem to be hostile because they kidnapped Cisco.
Yeah.
They don't know what's going on over there. So, we're trying to save you.
Ducat's like, then maybe they'll like us more. Bye.
Yeah, maybe they're more fascist wormhole aliens.
He got some real Kimmy K energy right there, and he's like, bye. And Odo's like, so much for reason.
It's definitely a very good example, and obviously we'll see this a lot of times, is when you see everything through your own lens.
Yes. Like I said,
it can really distort what's your perception.
He expects them to just flat out do the lying doublespeak thing, to not give him actual legit information. And because of that, he goes in the wormhole, and it's like 3 warships, right? Oh, no, 3 warships.
Later,
yeah.
Yeah, he goes to the wormhole, but his ship is crippled.
It goes into the wormhole, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the wormhole collapses, and, oh, bye.
Yep. So now Ducat is trapped in the Gamma Quadrant with a disabled ship, and the wormhole has been closed. And we find out later that's because the Prophets, when the ships go through it, like, disrupts them, so they think they're under attack, so they seal it.
And this is when the 3 warships come up, and they're like, where's Ducat? And they're like, trying to explain what happened. And they're like, a stable wormhole. Get out of here. You think we're dummies?
Yeah, especially the one line, you expect me to believe that someone created a wormhole and now conveniently has disassembled it?
Which, I get
right, when you hear it out loud, they're like,
yes. Like, oh, it's only their little runabout, right? I'm like, did he expect this runabout to, like...
I know, right?
So, I would be like, okay, I don't know if I believe them, but something's going on.
Yeah, it's definitely is so far-fetched that they're just going with the less far-fetched thing, which is that somehow they have, through trickery and deceit and whatever, have somehow destroyed Gold Ducat's ship. So they're very upset.
They want them to surrender. And so we get a lot of back and forth here. I didn't write a ton of notes.
The big thing is that the station is defenseless.
Yes.
It is, the Cardassians took all their systems. They don't really have anything. They do a line like, fire 3 photon torpedoes as a warning shot, and like, we only have 3 photon torpedoes. Like, well, we're just gonna have to bluff.
And I think this now shows Kira's leadership skills, what she brings to the table. She's good at bluffing and handling the Cardassians.
And punching above her weight.
Yes.
Because obviously she's been doing this fight her entire life.
Yes. She knows how they think. She knows how to get their attention. And pretty much the only gambits that they can do. Oh, I did write. Poor DS9. They just cleaned it up.
Yeah.
Because They get hit.
They start shooting. They buy a decent amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
They set up, some fields to like disrupt their scanners, so the Cardassians have to decide like, okay, are they really bluffing? Are they not?
Oh, because they're hoping the Enterprise will get there in time.
Yeah.
Because since they just left, they're the closest ship, but it's still like, I think 2 days. They said something like 48 hours away, something like that. So they're the closest ship, but they're not super close.
Yep.
So they're biding their time.
But eventually they decide to just attack. So, yeah, start blowing shit up. That poor
Station. That poor station.
I'm assuming they filmed all the stuff with the station together first.
Yes.
Then they blew it up. Then they probably filmed the intro where it was all destroyed and everything.
They're in the thick of it. Everything looks like it doesn't look great. It looks like they're going to have to surrender to the ship.
And there is a question of like, and there's another Bashir moment here. Like, well, I can't believe they would attack a Federation outpost, Surely they won't. But they remind them of the, you get a little more TNG backstory here with Setlik 3 Massacre where they did in fact attack a Federation outpost. So this is something they've done before.
Oh, we also have an interesting moment here with Bashir and Odo where because the station is hit, Odo's like, I need a doctor. And Bashir runs down and you see him in action. And even though Bashir's like really naive, he is a great doctor. He really knows what he's doing.
He's naive. He's cringe. He's
and like
everything.
An authority he has for being so young is really impressive because Odo's like, and he's like, hold this wound on the neck. Like, help me. I need your help. And he's like, you need to do this. Like, he's telling Odo what to do. And Odo, he's like a little bit uncomfortable, but I don't know. You just see a lot going on with like helping people in this manner.
Yeah.
Because, he's usually security buff, rough guy. The sheriff in town.
Yeah, not vulnerable.
Exactly.
And not good with people who are themselves vulnerable. And that's a good point about Bashir's moment here, because when you look at it, this episode, everyone gets a moment.
Yes.
Obviously, Sisko gets his moments. His moments are many.
Yes.
Dax gets her moment. She figures out with this wormhole. She shows off that she is the science officer. You have O'Brien pulling off miracles with engineering, and he gets his moment fighting with the computers. So he gets this little character development.
He's hot-headed, but he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. You got Bashir, who has been sort of a joke so far, but now he gets his moment to shine. You get Odo doing his stealth thing onto the ship. Even Quark gets to help out, like in this gray area. Like every Kira stands up to the Cardassians and like takes command of the station while Sisko is gone, showing off why she is the first officer.
Yes.
Like you get a real across the board. You get every character proving why they're here, why they belong. A little bit of personality. So yeah, it's a great showcase for the cast.
Also, Odo, the reason why he was on the runabout earlier is he mentioned that they found him in the Denori's belt. So maybe he's from this wormhole. Maybe he's from the Gamma Quadrant. Like, so he just went because he wants to find out more, but it's just like a little pin for the future.
Doesn't go anywhere this episode, but it will.
It will. All right, so we will put a pause right now on Kira and Deep Space Nine because it's not looking good. And let's jump back to Ben and his meeting with the prophets and how that's going. So he's trying to explain linear time and memories. For the prophets, everything exists at once. That is your existence.
Yep.
Man, my notes are all over the place. I was trying to write so fast.
Yeah, this is a tough one to follow.
Because he's focusing a lot on memories. Because especially with past, I'm like, what do you mean past? And they talk a lot about Jennifer and discuss her role in Ben's life. Because he says was, and they're like, was, and she goes, because she is lost to me. And like, what are you talking about? Like,
yeah, she's part of your existence.
Yes, and they keep bringing him back to the moment she dies, and they keep saying you exist here, and he goes, no, this is the past. he's not understanding
throughout
what
this
they're
whole
saying.
thing, they keep jumping around between different memories of his, and he's going through and trying to explain, but like clockwork, it always keeps going back to the Saratoga where his wife died. And then, they'll leave, and then they'll come back, and they'll leave, and then come back.
And so it seems like the big key of what they're having a hard time understanding is, how can you make decisions if you don't know?
Yeah, how can you live like this?
How can you? And he's like explaining to him with the memories, like, it's our experiences that help us make these decisions. And they're like, but how can you know, like, the weight of these decisions?
Yeah, how can you take responsibility for your actions? It's like, no, yeah, we do take responsibility. Because of our past experiences, we accept whatever will happen because of our actions.
And again, they take him back, Jennifer's death, and he says, I don't want to be here. And they go, then why do you exist here? And he's like, well, he just keeps getting upset. And then at some part, he explains baseball to them.
Apparently, Michael Piller is a big part of the show. He is a huge baseball fan. So, of course, they get the baseball thing in there. But yeah, they use that to explain, like,
outcomes.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different outcomes that happens. And that's what makes games for them exciting, is that we don't know the outcome. And they're like, you value your ignorance? Yes. They're like, how can you, like, they're like, how can you live like this? How can you?
That's his sort of aha moment is that, like, that's the one most important thing to understand about us, that, yeah, this game would not be worth playing if we knew the outcome.
Yes. They're like, boo. We also see a memory of Jennifer and them kissing, and a poor memory of them talking about, like, their future, domestic inquiries, and trying to figure out, like, pretty much, are their goals compatible? Like, does Sisko want a family with being in Starfleet? Is she okay having a family on a ship? Like, kind of sussing out each other. It's really cute. And they kiss, and they ask about, like, wait, what's that? And so just a lot of different questions about what linear progression means. And finally, towards the end, we go back to Jennifer's death again. And they're like, you're the one who's bringing us here.
You exist here.
And then I think it's where he finally has the breakthrough. He goes, I never left this ship. And he realizes that he doesn't exist. He's like, I see her like this every time I close my eyes. And they said, experience didn't prepare you for this outcome. He goes, no, it didn't. And I never figured out how to exist without her. I exist here. And they go, but that's not linear. And he agrees it's not. I think they decided to partner with Ben because he can understand their perspective. And can someone who's in linear time understand a species that's not? And because he exists both in the present and the past, he does, in a way, understand their perspective.
Because in the beginning, they even say, like, oh yeah, we have been seeking contact with other life forms, but not you guys, not corporeal creatures. Like, they don't consider him like as being at their level. So yes, you're right. Seeing that he can understand the concept of, like, nonlinear time, he's teaching them and they're teaching him.
Yes.
And that, I think, yeah, you're right, that brings them to a level where they recognize that this is a life form worth interacting with.
Yes. But that breakdown.
Oh yeah. There's something really, it's such a great way, it's such a Star Trek way of making something that a lot of people deal with and how to approach it in a sci-fi way, because you're talking about grief and how you don't let go of the past and how you are living in that, in your worst moment as non-linear wormhole aliens understanding, baseball, like this sort of sci-fi concept, bringing these very real emotions. It was one of the most effective demonstrations of how grief prevents you from moving on.
Yes.
That I've seen.
Because, and you clocked it at the very beginning, the look he has when he's leaving Saratoga and he's looking out. He left a part of himself there.
He exists. He's still, from that moment on, he existed on that ship.
And that drives his fear of what will happen to Jake if something else were to happen. And that's why he wants to leave. It drives his hostility with Picard.
Yeah, because he's still existing in the battle where Picard is the enemy.
Yes. And so it explains a lot of these key moments we've seen with Sisko throughout the pilot and how he's able to be in both places at the same time. And I think that's also why when he lands with Dax and he sees the world is turbulent and rocky, that's the part of him. That's the grief that has strangled him. And just this line of, every time I close my eyes, I see her like this. Oh, that's the line that really broke me when I watched this. And I cannot watch this scene without crying. It always gets to me. And just saying, like, I never learned to exist without her. Especially, and then the memories. And that's why I appreciate the scenes we've gotten with Jennifer, because you see their relationship. Like, I buy that a part of him never left. He deeply loved Jennifer. She's a real person on the show.
And it's also a great way of looking at, when he first describes her as being lost to him.
Yes.
As someone who he was part of his life, who he used to have, but now he's lost her. And their perspective is a very comforting one, because it's like, no, she is part of your existence.
Yes.
Now. Loss doesn't make any sense to them. And I think that's a good way of thinking it. Like, there are people who, yes, in our linear existence, we cannot interact with today, but they are still part of our existence.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting also because the way the prophets talk to him, they use, like, he sees people he knows.
Right.
And he sees a lot of Jennifer. And so to see Jennifer telling him these things like, you exist here, you're bringing us here. Like, so not only is he going through this, like, he's seeing Jennifer say these things to him. It's just like another layer of,
really helps drive it home.
Yeah. So thankfully, through this hard moment, we did get a positive outcome with the wormhole opening back up.
Right as they're about to surrender the station, wormhole opens up and out comes the Rio Grande towing Gold Cut's disabled ship.
I love it. Love it. And yep, so he's towing Ducat, and Kira just bangs on the intercom, yelling at the other Kardashians like, "There's your wormhole!"
Could have told you so.
I'm like, man, if she was able to flip something over, she would have flipped that table. And so, also, the reason why they wanted Deep Space Nine to get to the wormhole is because they wanted Bajor to lay claim, in a way, to, like, that area.
Right.
And control pretty much the commerce in that area. Like, that gives Bajor some value, economic value.
With all their struggles we talked about with how they're not, self-sustaining anymore, and they're going to be really struggling. This comes at the perfect time, because it gives them something that they can use to not just be dependent. This is like their ticket to becoming a true independent, influential state again.
And that's pretty much what Sisko and Picard talk about, because since Picard was on his way back to help DS9, they have another discussion, and it is the vibe
much different.
is so different. And Picard's like, "This is great. This is going to put Bajor on the map. This is definitely key to help them get into the Federation." So he's excited. And then Sisko brings up, "Hey, that
the request I made to leave."
He's like,
Picard's like, yes, yeah, I know. I haven't had a chance to communicate it yet.
Like, it's been 2 days, dude. And Sisko's like, no, I want you
to forget it.
Yeah. I want to stay.
And Picard has to make sure. He's like, are you sure? Because we can't have somebody here just uncommitted. And he sort of cuts off. He's like, I'm
sure.
certain.
And you could see in this experience that fear is being lifted. He's not afraid to lose his son. Because I think that was a driving factor of him wanting to leave. Is afraid he was also going to lose his son after losing his wife. And yes, you want to be careful. You want to protect your children. But he's seeing the value of staying and not letting that fear drive him. So there we go.
And they end with, they shake hands. Picard says, good luck, Mr. Sisko. And so now you have the true final, resolved passing of the torch.
Yes.
Got a little fake out earlier. You were left in a very awkward position. Now everything's been resolved. We're good to go.
All the nerds are happy now. Yay, we got our
The captains like each other, yay.
Oh yeah. Solid pilot. Such a good pilot. I love it.
Yeah, it really does establish the vibe of the show, the issues at play, all the major characters, gives them all their little moments.
Because even some great shows have rough pilots, because pilots are usually made way before, and because they have to shop, they have to show to producers and stuff like that. So sometimes that's why you usually see major changes between the pilot and one of them being someone gets a new haircut in the next episode. So things like that, because studios come in with notes, let's do this instead. I've seen shows where characters are kind of different after the pilot, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, here we'll get Kira gets a much better hairdo. Odo's makeup gets fixed up quite a bit.
Yes.
A lot of different things.
No, but I think wasn't a ton of changes. I think the pilot is really solid. So I'm glad we were able to get through this.
Yep.
we didn't have to record again.
Oh boy. Yeah, I keep looking over. All right, we're good. It's still recording. All right.
Yay.
I guess any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
No. Bashir was on his best behavior in this second part, so I'm thankful because the meter was high last time. We'll see how the rest of the season goes for him. And do you know, is it past prologue? Do you know the next episode?
Yeah, I think it's past prologue.
All I know is my favorite character waltzes in next episode, and I am over the moon. I can't wait.
Actually, I gotta check on what does Paramount have it listed as?
Oh yeah, Paramount has some funky stuff once in a while.
Yeah, past prologue and then A Man Alone. What's interesting, looking at the transcript list I have, the production number lists past prologue as being episode 4 and A Man Alone being episode 3.
I think we ran into this before.
Yeah, we'll have to see when we watch them both. If we can
is
catch,
there
if there's something they reference. But past prologue definitely
funky.
aired next. But
yes.
Production number, it's 4 and Man Alone is 3.
I want to say there was something when I was first watching this that I noted as being a little funky, and I think it was because they swapped them. They swapped them. So
they swapped them.
Swoopy swap. All right. Any final thoughts, Jonathan, before we head out?
That's all for me.
Yeah, I think we said our piece on the prologue.
Yeah.
Prologue. Pilot.
Yeah, great pilot, great Star Trek concepts at play here, and it really sets up the whole rest of the show.
Especially Ben and the Prophets. That is so Star Trek and good Star Trek.
Yeah.
All right. So we will see you next week with Past Prologue.
All right. See you then.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.